Tara, would you like to introduce the
Yes, so
today?
it is my pleasure to introduce Andy, who comes to us from JT Engineering. Andy is going to talk about the upcoming highway project, just give an overview, and then also field any questions that we may have. So thank you so much for coming and welcome.
So as mentioned, we're going to talk about the Highway 29 project from Highway 10 up to County Highway QQ to Wisconsin Department of Transportation project. Mohammed Hayek is the DOT project manager, and I am the project manager for JT Engineering, and we're doing the design for the project. This was kind of in the bio that I sent in, but I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville in 2005 with a degree in civil engineering, and I've been working with JT Engineering since 2010. So for today's presentation, I kind of want to touch on the overall life of a project, the DOT project, then kind of get more focused in on the Highway 29 project, hitting on the... Oh, sure. Sorry about that. Touch on the major items of work that we're going to do with the project, traffic impacts, the schedule to date, and then obviously answer any questions at the end. If anybody has any questions during the presentation, I understand this is fairly informal, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll do my best to try to answer them for you. So a typical life of a highway, after it's built, it kind of goes into a monitoring and maintenance type for quite a while, and this is there's not a lot of work going on here. Maybe some crack filling, or if guardrails hit, that's fixed out in the field, but no major items of work. Once its service life has kind of come to an end, DOT, their programming section, actually creates a project with kind of a rough scope of what's going to happen out there, and then hands it off to the project development section. Once they have the project, then it goes in through the whole design phase. The plans are put out, advertised to contractors. They bid on it in the letting, and then whoever typically is the lowest bidder gets the project, and then it's built, and then kind of starts all over again. For my presentation, I kind of want to focus on the bottom half of it, because that's really what we're involved with. I guess basically the design through the construction. So for Highway 29, I guess the design phase kind of basically can be split into two segments, the preliminary and the final design. And I guess one of the biggest surprises for me after graduating is you get a lot of training in very technical parts of engineering, the geometric design, but there's also kind of a softer side, such as like a lot of the agency coordination. And a lot of this is required by law, so it's not doing this out of the goodness of our heart, but for this project we contacted the DNR, Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Coast Guard, as well as the 11 federally recognized Native American tribes that have interest in Wisconsin. And for the most part, we're telling them this is what we're planning on doing and when we're going to do it, and we want their feedback to say, hey, potentially there's a burial ground in one area, or there's threatened or endangered species in the project corridor, and then we do, in our design, do the best we can to try to avoid that, or document and go through the process if we are going to impact those type of things. Also, we do a public involvement that's typically required on every project. For this job, in December of last year, we came to Prescott here and had a local official meeting, met with River Falls, City of Prescott, Pierce County, as well as emergency services to, again, give them an idea of what we're planning on doing, what the traffic impacts are going to be, and then get their feedback. Not necessarily for this project, but in the past there'd be like a large town celebration or a parade or something that then we put in the special provisions or the contract that the contractor can't disturb, can't be working during that to try to keep communities functioning as much as we can during construction. Same thing with the public involvement, letting them know what's going on, and also, again, looking for feedback, one with special events, or two, if, say a spot has really poor drainage or something like that, that maybe on the surface you wouldn't see, but somebody who's lived there for 20 years would be able to clue you in on that you can try to correct with the project. All that's kind of brought together in what's called the environmental document, and that's You detail all your agency coordination, what you have to include with the project, and you also develop different alternatives and study each one of those alternatives on how you can solve what you're trying to solve with the project. And that's, I guess, in my world, that's called a purpose and need. One big one for Highway 29 was improve the pavement condition, because it's a really rough ride. So it can be variable per each different project. Increasing capacity could be one, not the case out here, but I think you kind of get what we're getting at there. Also, I guess as far as investigation and reporting, we did soil borings out here to get an idea of what's happening underground, what type of pavement we're going to have to put out there to replace the existing pavement. Do reports on if there's any potential hazardous material in the right-of-way, so we can at least give the contractor a heads up that that's going to be out there and how they have to properly dispose of it. And not that it's an afterthought, there's also the actual physical design of a project, developing the alignment, the profile of the roadway, that type of thing, to the point that trying to accommodate or trying to adhere to current standards, but obviously life's not perfect, you can't always do that. The preliminary design phase sort of ends with your design study report, and that's more of a technical document, documenting everything that the decisions that were made and the direction that your project's going to go. Once that's signed and approved, you move on to the final design of a project, and again, you contact a lot of the same agencies, and they have an opportunity to look at your plans to date and see, make sure that all their original concerns or anything additional is taken care of in there. We also send the plans to all the utility companies that have facilities in the project corridor so that they can relocate their facilities if there's going to be conflict. And that's not always a one-way street. Sometimes, especially like a large transmission line or something like that, those can be very expensive to move. So if we can make minor modifications to the roadway to accommodate that, we will do that. And then really that's the end of that. We finalize the geometric design, the plans, and have our final submittal, which is, I guess, called the plan specification and estimate. So obviously you'd have your plan set, you'd have your written document of specifications on how and when they have to build things. And then also we try to get as close as we can to an estimated letting cost so that DOT can put that in their budget. And if you're, I guess it's no different than your personal budget. If you, if you want to do this project, this project, this project throughout the state, there's only so much funds. So that's how they estimate that. Then the plans and specifications are put out for advertisement, and then contractors can bid on those. And like I said, typically the lowest bidder is awarded the job and they construct it. So for Highway 29, I had mentioned go ahead. Yes.
So are you guys like the general contractor on it then?
We are not the general contractor. We are doing the design. DOT has, X number of projects that come out every year, and they solicit for them. And then consulting firms, we send in a notice of interest that we're interested in doing this project. This is the staff that we would plan to use on it. And then we're actually selected on a quality-based selection. It's not a low bid type thing for us. But no, we do the design end of it, and then that stuff's given to a contractor to actually build it.
So on the bidding side, you also set out the bid packages? Or does the state actually do that?
For state work, the state does. For like a local job, then that would fall back on the consulting firm.
Okay. So your firm will be there the entire time to oversee it and make sure it's done correctly?
We will not. DOT has a policy that if we do the design, we can't have our staff out on construction. And that's more of a transparency thing. So if they're catching problems that you missed in design, that there isn't a conflict of, well, we'll try to cover this up type thing.
So once the design's done, you guys are basically done?
For the most part done. Every once in a while you get some questions. During the advertisement phase, sometimes you'll get calls from contractors kind of trying to clarify what you meant by something. But yes, I guess for the most part, once we turn in our final stuff, we kind of step away from it.
So is there another firm? Does the state oversee it then? Or
it could be the state, because the state has engineers too that do the same work. So it could either be the state employees out there or another consulting firm could be out there.
Gotcha.
So major items of work, like I mentioned before, we developed the purpose and need. The biggest items were there's a problem with the pavement, there's a problem with multiple culvert pipes out there, and there's the existing guardrail is the old system, not the current standard system. So to remedy those, we're replacing the pavement out there. We're going to remove all the existing concrete pavement and the asphalt shoulders and replace that with 7 inches of new asphalt pavement. Current standards dictate that our shoulder, the paved shoulder, gets widened out a little bit, but our overall shoulder width isn't changing. So really the footprint of the roadway isn't changing much from what's out there right now. It's going to be a nice solid black, but it's not like we're expanding it significantly that there's going to be a lot of impacts. We're also, everything for this project's being done within the existing right-of-way, so we're not purchasing any easements or purchasing actual property from people. This is a culvert from a different project. I did not have a good culvert picture for out here. This is probably a really bad example of what can happen, you know, over time, culverts corroding, that type of thing. There are 11 pipes out here that we are planning on replacing, and if, I guess, left unchecked, they could develop to that point where you start, 1, being inefficient with your stormwater flow, and 2, possibly having structural issues with supporting the roadway over the top of it. Lastly, right now there's 3 sections of guardrail out there. We're going to replace 2 of those with, it's called Midwest Guardrail System. It's the new standard installation. And we're also getting rid of 1 section by flattening out the slopes behind it. That's actually the most desirable thing for roadside design, is to get rid of the hazard altogether, because even if you're protecting it with guardrail, the guardrail is still technically a hazard, even though it's crash worthy. So during construction, we're planning on detouring traffic along Highway 10 and Highway 65 throughout the duration of the job. Our project limits are shown in green, kind of the south and west half of 29. There is a separate DOT project that takes off from our east limits up to River Falls. So that one I'm not involved with, so I don't have a lot of background information on what that is. Right now, I believe the current plan is to have these 2 projects constructed at the same time, use the same detour, kind of get in for the construction season, get done what has to get done, and then get back out, instead of prolonging this into multiple years.
So if you're looking at like F to 29,
yes,
that section's going to be closed down the whole time too?
Right now, the current plan is to try to minimize the amount of time that from F to Highway 10 is closed. So it's going to be closed for part of the time, but try to minimize that because the traffic north or east of F really kind of drops off. So we'd like to at least leave it open in the existing condition for as long as we can, or get it done right away and then open it back up. Access, so the project, or Highway 29 will be closed to through traffic, but we will maintain access. Everybody will have access to their property. Emergency services will be able to get in. That'll just be in the specifications that the contractor has to provide that access to you. There may be some minor inconveniences, like if they're paving right in front of your driveway, that you wouldn't be able to get in for like an hour or something like that. But again, we put that in the specifications that the contractor would have to let those property owners know like 48 hours in advance. It's a pretty typical window, so that you can kind of plan that, hey, tomorrow from noon to 2, they're going to be out there. So if I can get in or get out before that or after, that would be in the best interest. Our project schedule, we had our local official public involvement meetings in December of last year. Our environmental document was signed shortly after that in January. Our design study report was completed in April of this year, and we just actually at the beginning of the month sent plans to utilities so that they can start their redesign of any facilities they have. That they have a 90-day window to get that done and get that back to us. Our final plans will be delivered in May of next year as the schedule stands right now, and then construction is planned for 2021, and we're thinking for the most part it's going to be a full construction season, especially if it goes with that other project. That's quite a bit of highway to get done. So I guess this is my contact information. If anybody has any questions in the future, I also have some business cards I can leave here, but other than that, I can open it up to questions now.
When they're planning this reconstruction, et cetera, I noticed in the past, I don't know, 10 years, there's a lot of drifting snow across 29. I'm not sure which end it's on of the construction, but what can be done? Can they raise the grade or anything? Because it's...
Potentially, I don't know if necessarily especially where you have large farm fields, if raising the grade is going to do that, it might push it off a week or two, but still you get that wind blowing across. This project's actually a pavement replacement, which falls more in the rehabilitation. So your reconstruction would be like your big improvement, your rehabilitation would be middle, and then you'd have like a kind of a perpetuation, more of a small time fix, that doesn't get you as far. So with a project like this, I know snow drifting had been brought up previously, but really where we're trying to stay within the existing right-of-way and basically maintain that roadway where it is, there's nothing that we're going to do as far as, trying to cure that issue.
When you say 2021, would it be spring 2021?
Yeah, my guess would be, especially if it goes with that other project and it's the same potentially it could be the same contractor. It doesn't have to be. My thought would be they try to get out as soon as the weather got nice. So.
And then, did you say it's going to go from concrete to asphalt?
Correct.
And is that more just a cost savings?
To some extent, I guess what's done for this project, for the vast majority of projects, you go through an actual pavement design. So you input your current traffic volumes, your projected volumes, all your truck percentages, in your soil conditions, all that, and you come out basically with a concrete thickness or an asphalt thickness, and then you go through what's called a life cycle cost analysis. Basically through like a 50 or 60 year, the asphalt would need to be maintained at 20 years and then again at 30 years, and you add bid prices to that, or material prices for that work, and then at the end, whichever option comes out to be less expensive is the one that's selected.
I didn't catch it. What other project is going on now that you mentioned?
Nothing on F as far as I know.
The other side of QQ.
Oh,
There's
yes.
another project on 29 up to River Falls.
Okay.
Yep.
Any change in the intersection of 29 and Highway 10? At one time they were talking a rotary in that area.
Roundabout.
A roundabout.
Roundabout, yeah.
Our project actually starts like give or take 300 feet north of 10, but I know there's a separate DOT project that's along Highway 10 that they are going to be working in the intersection. Unfortunately, all I really know about that is that they're going to be adding pedestrian accommodations in that area. I don't know as far as it being a roundabout, that one I'm not sure on. So.
When you mentioned changing from concrete to asphalt, and I'm sure it's a thicker asphalt than what most of us have in our driveways. Our driveways crack pretty regularly, especially with cold. How does that avoid it?
I don't know if any pavement will ever not crack, but this will, right now it's 7 inches of concrete out there, and we are planning on having 7 inches of new asphalt, so that is quite a bit. And we're getting rid of, if you did just like an overlay on this section, you'd still see that reflective cracking from the concrete underneath. That would show up relatively quickly, but looking at the boring information, the actual subbase, the gravel, and the roadway fill is actually pretty good material out here, so we're not anticipating to have really any issues with asphalt. Obviously down the road there are going to be cracks in the pavement that will happen, but not anything that we'd anticipate to happen, relatively soon after it's built. So.
I think I had heard at one time that it costs like $1 million a mile. Is that, do you know anything about pricing?
Actually, this project, we're just over $5 million right now, where our estimate is, and it's like 5.25 miles, so that works out perfectly with what you just said. But this is like a full pavement replacement, so in asphalt prices right now, or maybe towards the higher end, what they'll be come next spring, we don't necessarily know, but in this example, yes, $1 million a mile does make sense, but if we were doing, say, a complete reconstruct, you'd expect that price to go up, or if it was like a mill overlay type thing, you'd expect that project to be much less per mile.
Who bears the cost of this? Well, how does that, county, state?
This would be funded 20% state funds and 80% federal funds. So like FHWA, federal government would be paying for 80% of it.
How come it's a separate engineering firm for the two sections? Is it too big, of 29, is it too big a project for one firm to take on? It seems like.
Not necessarily too big for one engineering firm to take on. I think some of the, there was a box culvert, I believe, on the eastern section, and there was some additional coordination with the city of River Falls that I think that all played a role in it. And I think DOT does try to do, to the best of their ability, spread out work, you know, that one firm isn't getting all the work and then 3 other ones are sitting here getting nothing. So I don't know if it was necessarily too big for one firm, but I think it kind of made sense to how they, you know, split those 2 projects up. So.
In your design process, do you have to take considerations for the future as far as self-driving cars and such?
Right now, as far as the design of this roadway, we did not. Some of the features out there I could see lend itself to that, with vehicles being able to kind of steer themselves now. And I don't know that much about the vehicles themselves, but I'm assuming they're using the pavement markings on the road, and the pavement markings, even compared to 10 years ago, are getting to be a lot better materials, a lot brighter. If it's raining, that type of thing, they show up a lot better than what they used to. So I can see that lend itself to, you know, working better with a vehicle like that.
So that is where the technology is, in the pavement markings?
Well, that's not really the intent of it right now. The intent is so the driver right now can see that in all weather conditions, that shows up better, and obviously trying to improve it so they're not going out there to reapply pavement markings every 5 years, that if they can get 10 years out of something, that's, you know, just a less cost. And pavement marking's a very funny thing. You know, you wouldn't think something that's 50 cents per foot or $1 per foot is that big of a cost, but then you start talking 5 miles and you have a center line and you have edge lines, all of a sudden you see the cost of, you know, just the pavement markings on the road, and it can be kind of shocking. So.
Those edge lines seem to be a big deal. They dump down for us retirees so we don't run off the road.
And there's been a big push now, like the centerline rumble strips.
Yeah,
we've seen those around. Those have actually helped prevent run off the road type crashes for people who are, you know, if you're not really paying attention or starting to get sort of drowsy, that it's kind of shocks you a little bit, you know, when you go over the top of them.
So is that a standard now then?
For certain types of highway, yes. And you wouldn't, and certain speeds, you wouldn't put that like in an urban situation where you're low speed, but on your higher speed roadways, typically those are installed, yes.
Any other questions? Great job, Tara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.